Hey guys, this is Dawson Discussions, and my name is Nathan L. Dawson Jr. Today's date is June 4th, 2022. In this video, I will be reviewing this book, The Millionaire Next Door, The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy by Dr. Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko. So, stay tuned. This book, The Millionaire Next Door, The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy by Dr. Thomas J. Stanley and Dr. William D. Danko. It's actually a book that was published in 1996. The book is actually a compilation of research done by two authors. Again, Dr. Thomas J. Stanley and Dr. William D. Danko, in the profiles of millionaires in the United States of America. So on the back of the book, what it actually says is, why aren't I as wealthy as I should be? Many people ask this question of themselves. Often they are hardworking, well-educated, middle to high-income people. Why then are so few affluent? For nearly 2 decades, the answer has been found in the best-selling The Millionaire Next Door, The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy, reissued with a new preface for the 21st century by Dr. Thomas J. Stanley. According to the authors, most people have it all wrong on how you become wealthy in America. Wealth in America is more often the result of hard work, diligent savings, and living below your means than it is by inheritance, advanced degrees, or even intelligence. The Millionaire Next Door identifies 7 common traits that show up again and again among those who have accumulated wealth. You will learn, for example, that millionaires bargain shop for used cars, pay a tiny fraction of their wealth in income tax, raise children who are often unaware of their family's wealth until they're adults, and above all, reject the big spending lifestyles most of us associate with rich people. Most of the truly wealthy in this country don't live in Beverly Hills or on Park Avenue. They actually live next door. So what is a millionaire? Essentially, a millionaire is an individual whose net worth is in the millions of units of currency. In this video's case, the US dollar. By millions, I actually mean the 7 to 9 digits. Anything above that, then that person wanted to be a millionaire, but they would actually either be a billionaire or trillionaire or any number much higher than that. And of course, in this video's case, I'm actually going to be sticking with millionaire. So essentially, net worth is the value of all the financial assets owned by an individual or a household, minus the value of all of its outstanding liabilities. Example of assets that an individual or a household would factor into their net worth would be bank deposits, retirement accounts, stock brokerage accounts, and home value, for example. Excuse me. Liabilities include both secured debt, which is a home mortgage or an auto loan or a small business loan, and unsecured debt, such as credit card bills and payday loans. Now, according to this definition, a household owning $70,000 in a checking account, $150,000 in a savings account, $400,000 of worth of their primary home, $80,000 employer-sponsored plan, which is which would be like a 401k or 457 or TSP or 403b, $90,000 in an individual retirement account or an IRA, $50,000 in a general stock brokerage account, and also including a $200,000 rental property, $80,000 worth of precious metals, being gold, silver, platinum, palladium, for example. And lastly, again, for example, $10,000 in private equity, as in being an early investor in startups before they, IPO or go big. So altogether, they would have an asset value of $1,130,000. Now, if that same household have a $75,000 mortgage on that rental property, $50,000 in car loans, and a $5,000 credit card debt, then their liability worth would be $95,000. So the formula is simple. You take their assets and then subtract it from the liabilities, and then that household's net worth would be $1,035,000, and that household would be worth millions. So thus, that household would be a millionaire. The word millionaire was actually coined in French in 1719 to describe speculators in the Mississippi bubble who earned millions of livres in weeks before that bubble had bursted. Even though that millionaires constitute a small percentage of the population, at least in the in the United States. They hold substantial control over economic resources, with the most powerful and prominent individuals usually ranking among them. The total amount of money held by millionaires can equal the amount of money held by a fair higher number of poor people. The number of American households with assets of $1 million US or more, but not to exceed $1 billion, have been steadily increasing in the United States over the last decade. Okay, the authors of the book, Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko, both are doctors. So they compare the behaviors of those who they classify as UAWs, or the accumulators of wealth, and those who are PAWs, prodigious accumulators of wealth. So their findings is that millionaires are disproportionately clustered in middle-class and blue-collar neighborhoods, meaning a working-class person who performs manual labor like manufacturing, housing, mining, farming, construction, plumbing, working for HVAC like heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and not being in more affluent or white-collar communities. White-collar being a person who performs managerial or administrative type work, like consulting, marketing, academia, law, and finance, for example. Came as a surprise to the authors who anticipated the contrary. Stanley and Danko's book explain why, noted that high-income white-collar professionals are more than likely to devote their income to luxury goods or status items, thus neglecting their savings and investments. So the under-accumulator of wealth, UAW, is a name coined by the authors used to represent individuals who have a low net worth compared to their income. A doctor earning $250,000 per year could be considered a UAW if their net worth is relative to lifetime earnings. So if that same 50-year-old doctor earning $250,000, according to the author's formula, he should be saving at least 10% yearly. I should have about $1.25 million in net worth. 50 times $250,000 times 10% savings. Now, if their net worth is lower than that, then they are a under-accumulator. The UAW is based more on consumption of income rather than on the method of saving income. Also, another example would be an attorney with an income of $92,000 and $330. So using the PAW formula, his expected net worth is supposed to be $470,000, but it's actually $226,000 and $511. So with this, he actually live above his means, spending much more significantly more than those who are wealthy and well off to maintain that lifestyle and status associated with attorneys. The authors define an average accumulator of wealth, or an AAW, as having a net worth equal to 1/10 of their age multiplied by the current annual income from all sources. So if a 50-year-old person who over the past 12 months earned an employment income of $45,000 and an investment income of $5,000 should have an expected net worth of $250,000. And lastly, a prodigious accumulator of wealth, or a PAW, is the reciprocal of the more commonly UAW, accumulating usually well over 1/10 of the product of the individual's age and their realized pre-tax income. So, in order to be PAW, you should be worth 2 times your expected level of worth. So, often prodigious accumulators of wealth have 4 times the wealth of UAWs in their category. If you're half or less than the expected level for the category, then you would be a underaccumulator. For example, if a 50-year-old engineer has an income of $90,000 and if a 50-year-old engineer has an income of $90,200, using the prodigious accumulator of wealth, his net worth should be $451,000, but it's actually 1.1 million. And he also lives a modest blue collar lifestyle. Okay, so here are the main points of this book. So for one, spend less than what you earn. Anyone who spends more than they earn will fail to increase their net worth. Frugality is the quality of being sparing, thrifty, prudent, or economic in the consumption of consumable resources such as food, time, or money, and avoiding waste, lavishness, or extravagance. Second point, avoid buying status objects or leading a status lifestyle. Buying or leasing brand new, expensive, imported vehicles is poor value. Buying status objects such as branded consumer goods is a never-ending cycle of depreciating assets. Even when you do get a good deal on premium items, if you choose to replace them frequently, the older items hold no value and become a sunken cost. Point number 3, financial risk. So in finance, risk is the possibility that the actual return of your investment will be different from its expected return. Now, for PAWs, they are willing to take the financial risk if it's actually worth that reward. PAWs don't put every penny in their bank and then keep it there. They invest their money for really good returns and will consider riskier investments if they're worth the reward. Many put their money not only in the stock market, but they also put money in private businesses, real estate, and certain venture capital investments like being an early investor in a startup company. Like, for example, with that would be like if you were an early investor in Uber before it IPOs, and then once it IPO, you probably would have made a ton of money. Point number 4, family and generational wealth. Well, the authors make the observation that UAWs tend to have children who require an influx of their parents' money in order to afford that lifestyle and that they expect for themselves, and that they are less likely to have been taught about money, budgeting, and investing by their parents. So the authors talk about some common traits that showed up among those who have accumulated wealth, which is high income, low expenses, frugal, wealthy, breaking even, which is being a Spartan, spender, broke, and breaking even by being lavish. So on generational wealth, the authors stress the following. The first generation to have arrived in America usually works hard, saves prodigiously, owns a small business, live in or near that business, and pass on that wealth to their kids frugally. The second generation usually works in their parents' business, but they might move on. They tend to spend more lavishly and save less. The third generation may have probably sold the business already and may have already spent all the accumulated wealth. And finally, come to the fourth generation is probably not working at all, spends crazily, and have very little wealth in accumulated assets. Or probably they make really terrible business decisions. Or at least like trying to get the business back or trying to start their own business, but they just keep failing. For example, many are literally broke and are nothing like their great-grandparents. Now, this is known as generational wealth destruction as a main tenet in the author's work. Point number 5, spending tomorrow's cash today. Now, the most prominent idea shared by UAWs in American society in general is spending tomorrow's cash today. This is the leading cause of debt and a lack of net worth in the UAW category. This contradicts the common belief of a PAW. Save today's cash or tomorrow. Many UAWs do plan under certain conditions, such as the rising income, to use investment strategies to accumulate wealth. However, most actually don't use their investment strategies in order to accumulate wealth. So, for example, UAWs will promise to start investments once they have earned 10% more in annual income. Fortunately, when most do actually receive that 10%, there isn't an investment made or an increase in their contribution to their 401k or 403b, TSP, or 457, what have you. These claims and ideas usually branch off in the initial belief that a lack of wealth can simply be solved by an increase in income. Even among those that do invest money, most invest only because they have an excess of income. Between 2001 and 2004, the median family income dropped 2.3%. And in response, the percentage of families who own investment in stocks fell by 3.3%, showing that investments are only made in times of excess. Point number 6, better than theory. The better than theory is one of the main reasons many UAWs don't hold true to their promise to invest after rising income. That theory is that UAWs' necessity for that income will also rise in response to the risen income level. Most UAWs are possessed by possessions. According to a study conducted by Yale, and also stated in the book the Millionaire Next Door, individuals measure the level of their success through comparison to nearest neighbors and or closest relatives. Therefore, as the level of income rises, so will their desire to outperform those that they compare themselves to. This is also where you probably heard the term "keeping up with the Joneses," being metaphorical metaphorically, meaning again your neighbors or those at work, or maybe somebody in your family who is well off. Point 7, the better off theory. So in addition to the better than theory, there's also the better off. This suggests that UAWs who grow up in a poor family and land a high income career have tendency to feel the need to be better off than their parents. To a UAW, better off implies a larger house, respectable degree, a foreign luxury car, a boat, and a club membership. Hypothetical example is provided in the Millionaire Next Door to explain this concept. So Teddy is a typical UAW that grew up in a poor family but was still exposed to a rich lifestyle at school. He saw rich kids and decided that one day he would be better off than his poor parents. So sure enough, when Teddy reached a high income level, he indulged himself in possessions. He bought a large home along with a foreign luxury car. According to most UAWs, he lives in a very comfortable lifestyle. He lives a very comfortable lifestyle in terms of possessions, but in terms of financial security, Teddy's lifestyle is not so comfortable. Point number 8, money, a renewable resource. Another belief that UAWs have is that money is the most easily renewable resource. This belief usually is another leading cause of UAWs' consumption and investment habits. Money is more easily spent now than it is saved and or invested. In America, it is easier to generate a high income than it actually is to accumulate wealth over time. Point number 9, spending habits. When it comes to spending habits, UAWs are everything but frugal. A typical UAW tends to live in luxury, style, and above all, comfort. Not all UAWs fit into these characteristics. A $50,000 a year janitor can be more of a PAW than a $700,000 doctor. The spending habits that UAWs have are a direct effect of the better than theory. Point 10, $1 million choices. So some of the financial choices that UAWs make are considered to be $1 million choices because if the choice had been made, the UAW would have in excess of $1 million. So one example would be smoking. Smokers and drinkers tend to be UAWs because instead of building their net worth, they spent their income to purchase alcohol or cigarettes. Another hypothetical example, given the next Millionaire Next Door explains how a small purchase of cigarettes over a long period of time can accumulate a large sum of money. So Teddy's poor parents were smokers and drinkers. They smoked at least 3 packs of cigarettes a day during the week. 3 packs a day over 46 years translate into the sum of money that exceeded the value of their home by $33,000. Even more extraordinary, if Teddy's parents had invested and reinvested that money over a 46 period, then their portfolio would have exceeded $2 million. The value of a small amount of money over a long period of time is amazing because it's called compound interest, which is an exponential growth. A UAW makes choices that, although financially significant at the present value, have a very significant future value. Choices such as drinking 2 cases of beer a week, smoking several packs of cigarettes a day, and buying large amounts of unnecessary food and objects are some examples of your typical UAW choices. These choices are not necessarily large financial purchases right now, but over a long period of time, the opportunity cost of that money is very expensive. Point number 11, car shopping habits. According to the authors, a common UAW drives a current model car, purchased new, and may have financed it on credit. PAWs rarely purchase new model cars and are less likely to own foreign or luxury vehicles. An example from the book details that a UAW would spend 60 hours researching, negotiating, and purchasing a new car. In the end, while the car was purchased near zero cost, in the long run, the UAW's time and money could have been more efficiently spent creating wealth rather than collecting possessions notorious for depreciating in value. So the authors contrast the story with a PAW who decided that the pride of owning a brand new car wasn't worth the $200,000 price difference. On page 13 of the book, how many millionaires indicated that their most recent vehicle purchase was used? Nearly 37%. Point 12, investing strategies. So the difference between UAWs and PAWs is wealth. Wealth is usually attained through investment strategies that maximize unrealized non-taxable income and minimizes realized taxable income. UAWs tend to spend more time on purchasing a car than focusing on their retirement accounts. Appreciating investments such as a 401k or an IRA constitutes tax-deferred growth and produce an unrealized income for the individual holder. Some UAWs do hold a 401k and or an IRA, but with a low portfolio value. UAWs usually have the belief that in order to comply with the better than or better off theories, they need to maximize the realized income. Maximize realized income minimizes unrealized income, increases taxes paid, and produces low portfolio values. Certainly, there are some UAWs that do invest in the stock market, and they may be very active traders. Active traders move from stock to stock, trying to maximize their capital gains on investments based on daily fluctuations of the stock market. This investment strategy is very risky, but has the potential for some enormous capital gains. And then with capital gains also come with capital gain taxes, especially with those short-term capital gains taxes, because it most definitely will push you up into a higher tax bracket if you really do make serious gains. And also, UAWs are more prone to being swindled out their money from scammers, so usually through cold callers, telemarketers, or even today in the 21st century, bots, like those algorithms that be saying like, hey, I want to introduce you to my investment manager. And then, I think there was a story like somebody, they invested money with them, and then it seemed legit to that person. And the next thing you know, the scammer just ran off with the person's money. And then now that with all these scammers going around, it can also subject those to lose trust in the stock market and then eventually become a UAW. Then there are UAWs that have relatively low risk tolerance for investments. 20% of UAWs keep most of their cash in cash or near cash accounts like CDs or money market savings account that offer low interest rate, and those have high liquidity and are federally insured so that they have some quick access to cash when consumption habits rise. And then, of course, you have those UAWs who have considerable knowledge of the specific market or of a company or the type of investment, but do not utilize that knowledge to their advantage. And also, side note, Peter Lynch, the author of One Up on Wall Street, who was also a investment manager at Fidelity Investments, he preaches that to use your knowledge in the specific field that you know more about than other people. So essentially, for example, you can use a guy named Mr. Johnson. So Mr. Johnson is a six-figure earning, very successful executive at let's just say he's a really good successful executive at Tesla. He has been employed there for 10 years, during which the company has been explosively growing. So the stock price of Tesla stock has shot up in this 10-year period of time. During this enormous growth period, Mr. Johnson brought no shares of the company he worked for, even though he had first-hand knowledge of its success. And the same thing could also go for, like, you could be an executive and you probably don't buy the stock in Walmart or Nvidia or Intuit or Apple or Adobe or all these specific growth companies, like those hyper growth companies. And then again, another example of that could also be, Adobe and Intuit, they're not hyper growth companies. They're still growth companies because they still grow, of course. Not to, still confused. But, like those steady growth companies, like, you could be like a HP executive, but you probably bought like no shares, or maybe you could be like a team leader who worked at a company for, for like 15 years, and then 15 years later, the stock of your company, it might be Roku, and then since you never invested in Roku stock, then you're not as wealthy as you should be. Like that. In order to clarify my last point. And also for advisor selection, same thing with those. In order to protect yourself from scammers, on page 106, you have the Martin method for selecting financial advisors. When a stockbroker or any financial salesperson, telephone to Mr. Martin with an investment idea, Mr. Martin would then tell them to send a copy of their personal income tax return along with a list of what they had in their portfolio for the past 3 years at least. If the stockbroker had made more money from his investments than Mr. Martin, then Mr. Martin would invest in them. Now, if the salesperson refuses or just hangs up, then it's a scam, and then you were good, and then good on you for not following on with it, or you should not invest with them if they refuse because they have something to hide. And you really shouldn't work with somebody who have a whole lot of things to hide from you, especially if you hire them to help you out. Point 13, education and career choices. Although UAWs exist in all career fields and have obtained different levels of education, some professions are more likely to lead to a UAW lifestyle. Doctors, physicians, lawyers, dentists are among the top professions with a high UAW concentration of individuals. So, the individuals in these professions are twice as likely to be a UAW vice a PAW. And there are two reasons for these findings. First, because these professions require advanced degrees. Individuals usually get a delayed start in the accumulation race. Most of the income during these educational pursuits is used to fund tuition, housing, and student loans rather than investments. The second reason is that American society has prescribed a lifestyle to these professions. Doctors are expected to live in an upscale neighborhood with multiple cars, a boat, and other luxurious items. Their lives become a high consumption lifestyle to fulfill the better than theory. And also, point 14, a correlation between income and wealth. Well, with doctors having a high likelihood to become a UAW as evidence, there is an indirect relationship between the level of income an individual earns and the net wealth that one accumulates. Doctors have a reasonably high level of income, therefore it is more likely that doctors have relatively low amounts of net worth. The same holds true for those that have lower levels of income. They are more than likely to accumulate more in relation to their level of income. Of course, there are those who, with an exception to the rule, on both sides of the spectrum. So Teddy's parents were poor, but they live in a high consumption lifestyle, leading them to be UAWs. Point 15, children of UAWs. When children are brought up in a high consumption UAW lifestyle, they are more than likely to become UAW themselves, which is kind of not self-explanatory, but kind of obvious. More often than not, the children of high-income UAWs become more devout believers in the UAW system than their parents. The children grow accustomed to extreme luxury and believe that they too must possess the same luxury as their parents, even if their income is much less. It is an extreme manifestation of the better off theory. On the other hand, PAWs may also produce UAW offsprings. So if Teddy's parents had invested the money they had been consuming, they would have been considered PAWs. However, the standard of their living that their son, Ted himself, grew up and would have been diminished. So of course, Ted would have felt an even higher desire to be better off than his parents were. He may have been a UAW regardless of whether his parents were UAWs or PAWs. Point 16, economic outpatient care. Economic outpatient care, or EOC, is a term used to express when an affluent parent provides money to an adult child. Beside offspring observations resulting in UAW children, EOC is a contributing factor to the passing on the UAW belief. Offspring who receive EOC have a 98% of the annual income compared to the counterparts who are not recipients of EOC. In comparison, they also have 57% of the net worth. EOC gives recipients a false sense of financial security. For this reason, they purchase homes in upscale neighborhoods that exceed the recommended value according to their incomes. 30% of American families live in homes valued at $300,000, yet only earn an annual income of $60,000. These homes then demand nice cars for the driveways, nice furniture for the living room, a nice plasma TV to complement the furniture. These offspring also purchase and consume the EOC rather than invest it. These offspring, if a dose of EOC is given to the offspring on a regular basis, then the EOC can actually be absorbed into the individual's received annual income. Expenditures are then calculated with the anticipation of a regularly scheduled dose of EOC. And lastly, point number 17, America, the ultimate UAW. The average American is a UAW with an annual income of $32,000, a total net worth of $36,000, and a realized income value that is about 90% of their total net worth. The government draws a poverty line based on income, and society determines a family's well-being based on their income. Based on their level of earned income. Income is a poor indicator of well-being. On the other hand, wealth is a good indicator of the financial independency or financial dependency of individuals. Unfortunately, society has almost unlimited number of ways to consume income and limited ways to save income. Therefore, individuals are more prone to spend than save. That eventually results in adoption of a UAW lifestyle. Okay, criticisms of this book, The Millionaire Next Door. Well, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, a Lebanese-American essayist, mathematical statistician, former options trader, and risk analyst, he criticized the premise of the book on the basis of two instances of survivorship bias. Survivorship bias being the logical error of concentrating on the people or things that made it past some selection process and overlooking those that did not, typically because of their lack of visibility. And that can actually lead to incorrect conclusions. So Taleb says that there's no mention of the accumulators who have accumulated underperforming assets, and that the United States had just gone through the greatest bull market, which is a period of generally rising prices in its history at the time of the book's publication in 1996. He suggested that the author should have lowered the net worth of observed millionaires to compensate for the effects of the unobserved, those who didn't the unobserved, losers, and to consider the fate of the accumulators following prolonged periods of recession, such as the one in 1982 and those in 1935. So essentially, my take on reading most of the book, most of the book or almost all the book is, I highlight notes that actually make sense and in order to pick up where I left off. It's actually an excellent book on what it takes to be wealthy and what it takes to be a millionaire, at least next door, or the regular millionaire, literally just like how it says, the millionaire next door to you, and what it takes to get wealthy. Lots of examples, a lot of anecdotes and folksy aphorism. It also presents a formula for calculating how much wealth you're accumulating compared to other wealthy people. So the author makes the important distinction between the truly wealthy and those that just spend a lot of money just to look wealthy. So before hearing about the book and reading this book, before that, my image of a millionaire is the opposite of what the book is talking about, and that they live in exclusive neighborhoods. That was actually my idea of millionaires before I heard the book and before I read this book. And also, again, the biggest flaw per Nassim Nicholas Taleb is the survivorship bias. Though Stanley addressed survivorship bias briefly in the book, he gathered a very biased sample of people who are already millionaires, so the data set was extremely susceptible to survivorship bias. For example, in 2015, a janitor by the name of Ronald Reed, R-E-A-D, made headlines after his death when it was uncovered that he had accumulated about, $8 million in stocks. So Mr. Reed lived a very low-profile life, worked a low-profile job as a janitor, and never really exhibited signs of any wealth to his community or family. So the fact that Reed made headlines shows that he was an extreme outlier and downright lucky to have made the stock bets he did at the time that he did, and that he did so. In addition, Reed's family house cost him $16,000 in the 1960s. Adjusted to 2017, that house would be equivalent to a little over $131,000. That essentially rules out home ownership in both coasts of the United States. You also need to remain in America's heartlands, find a stable job there for 65 years, and purchase a family house that would cost around $130,000, which is a rarity these days. Again, nothing personal against Robert Reed, because I don't know him personally. Of course, I don't know him personally because I haven't really heard about his story until recently. Again, I'm not trying to downplay Mr. Reed's journey. It's just that it's just that survivorship bias. Not only that, my generation is millennial. I'm a millennial. I was born in 1994. Not only that, being a millennial, we're prone to lower salaries. We also have a student loan debt that's actually dragging us down. I personally never took out student loans out to high school due to I didn't want to go to college because I didn't like my K through 12 experience. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I also didn't know which college I wanted to go to. So instead, I opted military service instead. Millennials, we also have stunted wage growth, job instabilities, layoffs, especially with this pandemic. And we also have a forecast of lower GDP growth and stock market returns for the rest of this century. And also another thing that I did like is how to computing what's expected net worth, because most of the time we just go like net worth, like, okay, this is my net worth. Is this like good? Is it bad? Is it so? But you have to multiply your age times your realized pre-tax annual income from all sources except for your inheritance, then divided by 10, because they want you to save bare minimum 10%, and then that's actually what your net worth is supposed to be. So my matchup is 27 times 70,000, which is my gross annual salary, times 10%, and that's actually $189,000. Now, since my net worth is below $94,500, then I am a UAW. So yes, I am a UAW. In order to be an AAW, my net worth, assets minus liabilities, at my age should be $189,000. And for me to be a PAW, my net worth has to be, again, assets minus liabilities. Should be my net worth should be $378,000. So essentially, my plan on becoming a millionaire, despite the survivorship bias, and then despite all these things, that might make it a whole lot difficult, like stunning wage growth, lower GDP growth of the country and whatnot. I plan on becoming a millionaire by doing freelancing work, owning a variety of small businesses. I'm probably going to focus on retail businesses, like owning a restaurant, trying to own a dry cleaner, thinking about owning car washes, gasoline shops, gas stations, gas stations, and other business industries, like trying to get into supply chain, because I'm trying to like open up a trucking business, kind of like an owner operator type thing. Like I own the equipment, but I hire contractors to operate. 3, I want to own a fintech startup. Of course, I been studying the finance industry, but I think finance is probably my life's purpose instead of like a totally different career field. I think like finance, like business ownership, I think that's like probably my life purpose than like becoming a teacher or like being involved in politics, like being a politician. Like I think my life work is probably being economics. 4 would be owning franchises. 5, investing in real estate, online crowdfunding, like through Fundrise and other investment opportunities through real estate and rental properties and tax liens. 6, stock investments. 7, bond investments. 8, investing into commodities, like owning physical gold and silver, which I do have in my possession. Oil, and owning agriculture, like be able to invest in coffee, like since coffee is a big thing, Starbucks and whatnot. Probably like, why don't I I can invest in a coffee farm somehow. It might be difficult, but I probably will find a way. Number 9 would be a early investor in startups. I'm an early investor in Dollar Ride, Quick Loads, and Choose Health. and 10 would be other ventures. Okay, this is Dawson Discussions. My name is Nathan L. Dawson Jr., and this was a video review of The Millionaire Next Door, and I'll probably have a link in the description to, Amazon or something on where you can buy this book. This is Dawson Discussions. My name is Nathan L. Dawson Jr., and I will see you next time. Take care and have a nice day.